You also, wrote something, that kind of hit me. And then you said 10 years ago, as a resident, you actually believed that every medical decision was based on the best available evidence and
Yep.
focus on best for the patient. And now you know that's not always true.
Yeah.
What broke that belief for you?
When you actually start getting in the weeds of how products are paid for, what incentives that might set up, and in our market, essentially the same products were priced 10x different. So there's a lot of sort of Me Too products that exist that at the end of the day are the same thing. And they were priced on a scale of, one might be $100 a square centimeter and one might be $5,000 a square centimeter for the same product. So if it's the same product, the decision of when and how to use it should be the same. And it's not what was seen in the industry.
Yeah.
And, the amount that reimbursement and payment dictates product success is eye-opening. I think as a resident, it might be because I was naive and kind of a bubble, but nothing you do in that setting, it's kind of the most pure medicine there is. Nothing you do as a resident in training is dictated by cost. And it might be a kind of naive lens that you get to wear in that training period.
Yeah.
But you're essentially just trying to get patients the best possible treatments as quick as you can and get them healed and back to their life. And you're not factoring in anything else other than what's available for you to do in the hospital.
How do you fix that? And also, can you use, new tech AI to fix that? Is there a way?
I think being able to see the outcomes is the best way to fix that. So what we were talking about of in real time for whatever disease you want to name, to see how are the outcomes evolving, how are the treatments working within, the different risk stratifications of patients. You need to have the transparency to make a decision on evidence. Randomized trials are great.
Yeah.
Small studies are great. But ultimately, if you want to change the way people treat patients to get back to that pure medicine, they actually need the info to make it happen. So things like open evidence, I think, are a huge step forward in that. It's not perfect. I've used it. It can give you an amazing snapshot of any question you have in real time. And if you want to go dig deeper, you're going to have to do a lot more work. But it'll hit the high notes very quickly where, things like that are getting to what I'm describing. It's not quite there because that's just scraping the literature, which is already behind what's going on in real time. So if you can even push that back further to EMR and claims data info being available to answer your questions, that's the biggest first step. Because I can tell you all day long ideas of how to fix the payment structure. They'll all be wrong if we don't have the info as to what to guide it towards. So if we start with the data, we start with the knowledge of what should be done clinically, I actually do have confidence the payment structures will follow. But right now, they're as limited as we are into their view of what works and what doesn't, and really how to pressure test that.
How do you think? So I mean, I'm just trying to get AI into this piece, right? That's what the podcast is. How do you think AI can augment, taking a product like this from where it is today to the patient who needs it? Can you kind of paint a picture where you see technology at any place or multiple places helping guys like you to sort of blow this up?
AI can be surrounding what we're doing in a lot of different ways. I think one way is how wounds are actually being managed and how they're being tracked. There are a ton of companies right now that have AI imaging. So take a picture of the wound, tells you how big it is, might tell you other things about the wounds. Some of them can actually determine what the blood flow is there bacteria in the wound? So really monitoring the progress. We'll potentially be able to define with certain devices, what wound is needing skin TE and what wound is ready for it. So has it been prepped and cleaned and ready to get a product put on the wound is, a huge piece, and then tracking those outcomes by taking images and not just measuring with a ruler. So that's taking off. We use all of that in our trials. So we always have imaging devices measuring the wound every single week the patient comes in. And then I think if you also look at what we just talked about, we're trying to get from just diabetic foot ulcers towards all these other indications. How can we do that most efficiently? So there's a lot of recent development in using real-world evidence or using AI to make a matched control cohort where you may not have to run a randomized trial. So there's a lot of wound indications where running a randomized control trial is very difficult. If you think of traumatic wounds, like you were just describing, you experienced, every single one of those is very different than the other. And to try to think you can just randomize it out even is very challenging. So could you just run a single arm with the treatment and then find a big enough matched cohort to run the trial more efficiently in a manner the FDA is going to accept? So there are companies now that can do that and validate how they pull all the data out so it can actually be audited. That never existed before. So regulators can start having a little more confidence in allowing those trial designs to occur if they know they can actually trace back to how it was all done. So can you get through your pipeline and lifecycle development faster? And another huge piece is, we're really trying to transform this market into a totally different field of medicine. We need to know what's happening with these patients. Right now, there is no good comprehensive knowledge of what makes someone get a diabetic foot ulcer. Once you have one, how do you know what your chances of healing it are? What are the chances of the complications? And how do all the treatments fit into that picture? So there's no complete snapshot of multiple years before the ulcer forming, treatments, and years later, what has occurred. So we've put a ton of effort into putting that all together and talked to numerous companies that, have AI solutions using EMR data, using claims data, and, ultimately had to make a lot of decisions about what direction we were going to go on that front. But I think that field is rapidly evolving. We're not actually pursuing really an AI solution to put that together right now. Because we didn't have anyone prove through some feasibility studies they could pull it off. So we're taking a little bit more of a traditional approach for that project, but I know in, 2-3 years from now, we probably could have been doing that project in real time with much more data, with, a better representation of the entire market versus right now we're kind of focused just on Medicare patients because that's where you think we can pull this off the best. So I think tracking what's going on, what are the outcomes, what treatments work in what specific situation will help the field actually make decisions. If you look at oncology, it is loaded with data you can pull, from numerous public sources and really stratify down, what tumor is this, what therapies might target it. That's evolving, but it is light years ahead of where we are in wound care. And, we're hoping to go in that direction with wound care to really bring the data piece in to make, have everyone making informed decisions about what they're doing for the patient. And it's not based, off of factors outside of the actual evidence.
So, and this is really exciting because you mentioned real world evidence. That's all we do day in, day out. And we build a lot of AI on real world evidence on Komodo's data, as I told you in the beginning. What do you actually see, working in this setup? So, and let me give you a bit of a context. So, I was reading through your pre-discussion, and then you mentioned that about 2 to 3 years back there was nothing that was exciting in AI in life sciences, but then much more recently you have realized there are some use cases in AI. So what do you think is actually working in AI in pharma and biotech, and is that real world evidence, or is there a combination of more than that?
I think we're getting there with real world evidence. I think with certain fields of medicine, you could probably pull it off today.
Yeah.
With us in wound care, for a variety of factors, it's still very challenging to use the tools that exist to get the info you need based on how wounds are commonly coded for billing. That is a little bit of a mess. That doesn't provide the detail you need to really stratify patients. So you can have the best AI tool in the world, but the coding's not set up to actually reveal the info that you need. And then on the EMR side, all those details are in there, but it's very messy. So patients often have more than one wound at a time.
Yes.
So how do you know you're tracking the same wound?
Yes.
Some people are more diligent about, saying how big it is, how deep it is, what the status is every single week, and labeling it, as wound 1 and wound 2 or however they're writing. But on the whole, what we couldn't get to was the confidence that the wound and patients that are being tracked are the same wound within the same patient using AI. We did a lot of feasibility where it would pull out the info we were looking for, and then when we probe deeper, there was no guarantee that it was actually doing it correctly. And it would have just resorted to a lot of manual quality check to the point where, it wouldn't really be feasible to do it with as many patients as we were trying to. I think you could do that in other fields where the coding data, the notes, all provide the info in a pretty clear way. So I think real world evidence is getting there. I think it's going to get there in wounds. There's a lot of momentum to change the codes. So a group that we're involved with, the Wound Care Collaborative community, is right now submitting proposed changes to get the coding lined up where you can get all the details you need from the day-to-day coding. And then they're also building, a pretty huge registry to get all of the detailed info about the wounds. So once the data exists, I think AI is there to make use of it, but you just need it to be available.